You don't need to raise your voice. You don't need to explain yourself endlessly. You don't need to send long messages pouring out your heart just to be acknowledged by someone who never truly listened in the first place. What you need is one moment, one clear decision, one action rooted in self-respect, and it changes everything. Here's the truth. Most people avoid saying out loud, toxic people aren't complicated. They're predictable. They operate in patterns, same tactics, different faces. They provoke until you react. They twist your words. They use guilt. They make you feel like peace is something you have to earn. But the moment you stop feeding that cycle, the game ends. You do this once, and they often stop bothering you the same way again. Start here. Set a quiet boundary, not a loud one. Loud boundaries come from pain. Silent boundaries come from clarity. When someone crosses your line and you don't yell, you don't threaten, you don't argue, you simply shift. You stop replying. You stop sharing. You stop engaging with their chaos. That silence carries weight. And they feel it. It's not passive-aggressive. It's self-preservation. You don't need to debate with people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You don't need to win every argument. When someone shows you a version of themselves that is cruel, manipulative, or draining, you don't need to ask why they did it. You need to ask why you stayed after they did. And once that question becomes honest, something opens inside you. Some people remain in your life only because you keep allowing them to explain away their behavior. The moment you stop over-explaining, they begin to lose their grip. They thrive on your need to be understood. So stop handing them that power. No is a complete sentence. That doesn't work for me is enough. You don't owe long explanations to people who wouldn't offer you even a moment of accountability. The next time a toxic person tries to provoke you, don't react. Reflect, not emotionally, but calmly. Let their sarcasm meet indifference. Let their insults land on a presence that doesn't flinch. Let them see you protect your peace without raising your voice. It confuses them. Why? Because they can't argue with someone who refuses to step into the ring, then go deeper. Don't just cut contact, cut access. There's a difference. You can block someone's number and still carry them in your thoughts all day. But when you truly remove their access to your time, your attention, your emotional space, that's when you take your power back. You stop talking about them. You stop checking on them. You stop allowing their shadow to live in your mind. And that is where freedom begins. If someone can disrespect you once and still remain in your life without consequence, what you've shown them is that there's space for that behavior. But the first time you calmly show them there isn't, everything shifts. Not because they changed, but because you did. And sometimes all it takes is one firm, quiet action to reclaim your peace. This isn't about revenge. It's not about becoming cold. It's about drawing a line that says, I value myself too much to stay in your storm. And the moment you make that decision, even once, toxic people begin to lose the path back to you. And you start to breathe again. Toxic individuals often depend on your reaction to fuel their behavior. It's not just about what you say. They observe how you respond, how unsettled you become, how much attention you give them. The stronger your reaction, the more control they feel they have. They thrive in chaos. They know how to push the right buttons because they've studied your emotional patterns. The moment you start raising your voice, over-explaining yourself, or defending every detail, they feel like they're winning. That's why setting a quiet boundary shifts everything. It disrupts their expectations. They expect conflict. They expect emotion. They expect drama. But when all they receive is stillness, silence, and composure, they don't know how to respond. That's real power. A silent boundary is not about disappearing or being passive-aggressive. It's about deciding within yourself that someone no longer has access to the parts of you they once took advantage of. It's a decision that says, I'm not going to teach you how to treat me anymore. I'm going to show you that mistreating me means losing me. You don't announce it. You don't warn them. You don't argue. You just shift. Conversations become shorter. Explanations fade away. Emotional investment dries up. You begin responding with calm instead of trying to prove your point. And slowly, they begin to notice that they are losing the influence they once had over you. Toxic people don't respond to logic. They respond to energy. That's why trying to reason with them often feels like going in circles. They twist facts. They avoid responsibility. They manipulate emotions. But when you respond with calm detachment, when your boundary is steady instead of reactive, they lose their leverage. It's like turning off the lights in a room where someone is trying to perform. The audience is gone. The spotlight disappears, the performance becomes pointless, and eventually they step away. What makes silent boundaries so powerful is that they protect your peace without draining your energy. You don't have to explain why you're hurt. You don't have to defend your decision. You don't have to convince them they're wrong, because you've stopped seeking their approval. And that's what changes everything. When you stop needing toxic people to understand your pain, you begin to heal. They feel that shift. They notice your silence. They recognize the absence of your attention. And they realize that whatever game they were playing, they're now playing it alone. The beauty of this approach is that it doesn't require confrontation. Not everyone deserves closure. Not everyone deserves an explanation. Some people deserve nothing more than your absence. And when you give them that, not out of bitterness, but out of self-respect, it speaks louder than words ever could. It says, I've outgrown the need to argue with you. I've outgrown the need to be seen by someone who only notices me when it benefits them. I've outgrown this cycle. And what's even more powerful is that when you start setting these quiet boundaries, you begin to attract peace into your life. You realize that not everything needs your reaction. Not every insult needs your defense. Not every accusation deserves your explanation. Some things are simply not worth your energy. That's not weakness. That's maturity. That's emotional intelligence. That's you choosing strength over insecurity. The moment you choose stillness over shouting, calm over chaos, you begin to rewrite the rules of how people can treat you. And toxic people don't stay where they're no longer fed. When you stop being available for their games, their drama, their emotional pull, they withdraw. Not because you force them to, but because your energy no longer supports their behavior. You don't need to fight to be free. You just need one quiet decision made with clarity and carried out with consistency. Set the boundary once. Let your silence communicate the message you're tired of repeating. And watch how quickly those who relied on your reactions suddenly have nothing left to take. Toxic people rarely listen to your words. They study your patterns. They test how much space they can occupy in your life before you push back. And when you try to argue or explain, they often turn your own words against you. That's why direct confrontation doesn't always work. What works instead is reflection. Not mocking, not copying, but calmly mirroring behavior with emotional neutrality. When someone speaks with disrespect and you respond with composed distance instead of emotional chaos, they are faced with a version of themselves they cannot easily ignore. And most toxic individuals struggle with that reflection. Mirroring is subtle. It doesn't require raised voices or dramatic confrontations. It's about holding up a mirror without saying much at all. When someone tries to manipulate you with guilt and you don't rush to justify yourself, the guilt loses its power. When someone tries to distort your reality and you calmly say, "That's not how I experienced it," and leave it there, you anchor yourself in truth. The goal is not to make them agree. The goal is to stay grounded in your reality and let their confusion belong to them. That's what makes this approach so effective. It doesn't attack, it reflects. It makes toxic behavior uncomfortable to maintain. If someone constantly interrupts you to dominate the conversation, you don't match their aggression. You respond with quiet disengagement. You pause. You let the silence highlight their behavior. Over time, it becomes impossible to ignore. Or if someone continuously blames you for things outside your control, instead of defending yourself repeatedly, you stop feeding the cycle. When they say, "This is your fault," you respond calmly, "I don't see it that way," and leave it there. No argument, no escalation, just steady clarity. The key is staying grounded. Toxic people rely on emotional reactions because emotions are easier to manipulate. But when you remain calm, centered, and consistent, they lose that advantage. You're not there to fix them. You're there to protect yourself. And reflection is one of the most effective ways to do that without losing your sense of integrity. It's important to remember that this isn't about revenge. You're not doing this to hurt anyone. You're doing it to free yourself. You're creating a pause, a moment where they are faced with their own behavior without your reaction.